I want to turn now to Todd Graham. He's the director of debate at Southern Illinois University. He's been named the National Debate Coach of the Year 3 times. Boy, I'm wondering what sort of grade you would give those two men on the stage last night when it came to their debate performance and their skills, Todd.
A fine question, and Marcia, thank you for having me on as a debate coach, because it doesn't seem like my expertise was needed after watching that mess last night. You needed more of a counselor or a therapist than a debate coach, so I appreciate being on the program. The grades I gave were actually, I began with Frank Fahrenhoff. That's not a name you've heard very much, Frank Fahrenhoff, because he's the chairman of the Commission on Presidential Debates, and he started with an F because he's the one that set the ground rules for this. He told Chris Wallace, just be a facilitator, let them have open discussion. I don't want you to fact check. And so I've been predicting for a week that this very chaos was going to happen. So he gets an F for setting up a poor debate. As a debate coach, we know that you have to give judges and moderators rules. You need to let them know how to do it. And so that's where it started. Chris Wallace gets an F. It was the worst debate he's ever moderated. Donald Trump gets an F for lying, for interrupting, for being rude, for going over. And I gave Joe Biden a C. And maybe it's just because the best you could do against any debate in that would maybe be a B. Joe Biden did okay. He had a few good lines. He definitely got more policy answers in, but he still interrupted on his own. So there were techniques I could have taught him to do a little bit better in that debate. So that's why I pulled him down to a C, but clearly still the best person there.
And just on the point about Chris Wallace, he said going into the debate that he wanted to be invisible. Boy, those words are going to haunt him, Todd, because it wasn't until at least an hour in that he was reminding President Trump, hey, you agreed to these rules that you would let your opponent speak for 2 minutes. So there's a lot of questions about whether or not there's going to be the other two debates, if they're going to take place. What do you think should happen? Should there be a kill switch on Mike? Should there be an ability to time out? What would you like to see if there is, in fact, a second debate?
Oh, boy, a lot of questions. Marcia, let's start with that first one. Chris Wallace was what I'm calling like a bad parent. He wasn't there when he needed to be, and then all of a sudden at the end, he became overbearing. So you can't just make up for your mistakes in the first 30 years of your child's life by then picking up for it. He made mistakes in the first hour of that debate by not taking control, and then it was way out of hand. Now, here's what I will tell you. The next presidential debate is a town hall style debate. Those are historically less argumentative and less combative, because we've each seen Donald Trump and Joe Biden have town halls recently, and it generally has a way of bringing the mood down and more calmer because you're talking to an audience of American citizens. I expect that will help. I also think Steve Scully, who's a fine moderator, he will learn from the mistakes made in this. As for do you turn off the mic or not, that's a really fair question. My partner, Christopher here at home, has been arguing with me for this over the last year. I've always been like, no, you shouldn't do that. After last night, I said, you might have a point, honey. But the problem is when you turn off the mic, when do you do that? So let's say you turn off the mic on Donald Trump when it's not his turn to speak. That's going to bring in all new problems because he's still going to speak over the candidate. Biden will still get interrupted because he'll hear him, and then he'll still have a poor speech. Plus, what if Donald Trump, if you turn off the mic on Joe Biden when it's not his turn? That means Donald Trump can just lie for 2 straight minutes, and Biden can't call BS on anything because his microphone is turned off. The deal with debate is like any other game. You've got to practice it. So if they want to do microphones turned off, they needed to do some practice with that to see what would go right and what would go wrong. I think the town hall format in itself will fix a lot of these problems.
But how do you debate a bully?
You debate a bully by trying to do things a little bit differently. So the first thing is when he first interrupts you, you stop. I think part of the problem is Joe Biden tries to keep going on with his answer. He stops, he looks at him, and there are a couple things to do. The first is I have some clever lines written down like, Donald, you had 2 minutes to answer this question. You couldn't do it then. Why do you think interrupting me is going to help you a little? Literally, I've written down like 10 or 11 of those for the first 10 or 11 interruptions because I thought if I'm coaching Biden before this debate, what would I do? So I have like 10 of those. But after that, there's a technique my students use. used. We used to debate teams that bullied us like that because they didn't think they could beat us in the debate. So they just tried to throw us off our game and make rude comments to us. And so we would do a couple things. We would just tell the judge, listen, we're not going to keep fighting with them, but we will raise our hand every time they tell a lie, every time they say something that's like. So rather than Joe Biden having to interrupt Donald Trump back, he could just raise his hand again when it's not his turn, raise his hand again when it's not his turn, and then that could work with it a little bit. But you've got to set the tone right up front, and that has to start with the moderator.
Last question. Did the debate last night shift the race?
I don't think it shifted the race because clearly people didn't like what they saw. Now, it could hurt either candidate. It could hurt Joe Biden if people walked away and thought, well, they're both the same. They're both insufferable. So hopefully people saw, and what they said in most polls is people saw Donald Trump as being completely over the top and obnoxious. It won't change your base voters, but here's the thing. It's not independents we should be talking about. It's people who already want to vote for Trump or want to vote for Biden, but might not actually go out and take the activity of voting in a pandemic. So it's those people that you've got to encourage, and you do that by having a better debate. You can actually get people to go out and vote.
Todd Graham, what a great conversation. Please come back and speak with us. I'm so glad you were able to join us. Todd is the director of debate at Southern Illinois University.